Good morning all. You can see that it is a beautiful day, a beautiful morning this morning, and forecast to be good all day. I've had a slight change of plan around the order in which I'm going to do things, as happens at night when you think about things. I want to get to the point where I have the roofing iron on, or actually I want to get to the point where I can put the roofing iron on, but I need to be a bit careful because I do want to put plywood on these two top layers. Let me spin the camera around and explain. The issue is that some of the things that I'm going to be storing in here are less than 1.2 meters long, so they won't span from there to there, and so they'll fall through. So what I'm planning to do is to put some plywood in on probably the top two levels, not the bottom one. But we'll see, that may change. I may do just this first section as well. I have the plywood in the shed. It's some I bought quite a while ago, but it's not exterior ply, so it won't like moisture getting on it, so I need to bear that in mind. So with that in mind, I can't put the plywood in until I know that I am going to get the roof on the same day, just because I don't want it to get rained on. Now, we're not predicted to have any rain. Well, we are actually on Saturday, but that's a couple of days away yet. But before I can put the roofing iron on, I actually need to apply the rust kill to it. And so the order of events needs to be get the iron sorted, so that will be the first job, and then once I have done that I can go ahead and put the plywood in, and then I'm also going to put building paper underneath the iron. Now normally with building paper it needs to be supported. Well, the stuff that I'm using does. It's the old black one that I have some of from other jobs, and so I want to use it. It's been kicking around for too long anyway. Now I don't have the wire netting that you would normally put underneath it, so I'm going to use some packing strap that I've also had for probably near 30 years, and I will staple that up there between the purlins, probably a couple of runs between each purlin, and that will support the paper instead of using the netting. That's the plan. I will probably do a lot of this via time-lapse rather than video, just because it'll be easier to deal with. And so initially I need to crack on and do the rust kill treatment on the iron. So we'll get on with it. As you can see, some of the sheets of iron are quite corroded. From memory, this iron originally came off our house. The first part of our house dates back to the late 40s, early 50s, so this iron is probably around 70 years old. This iron is now of an obsolete design. I don't know in which decade iron changed from this design to what we have now, but if you look at the end of the sheet, you can see that on both the edges of the sheet that the iron is either going up or down, depending on which way up the sheet is lying. With modern corrugated iron, each side is different, i.e. one edge goes up and the other goes down. Back when this iron was used, you always had what were called undersheets and oversheets. Additionally, because the galvanizing wasn't as good as it is now, you always had to prime where the sheets overlapped other sheets. both on the sides and, because sheets were short, top and bottom as well. As I was remediating these sheets, I had to make sure that I had an appropriate number of undersheets and oversheets to make it work. You will also see that most of the sheets needed a bit of panel beating. They've been used for various things. I have found that a piece of galvanized pipe and a ball-peen hammer work great for this task, and what that doesn't sort, a pair of pliers will manipulate back into form. You will have noticed that I started out using the hand wire brush to clean the iron, but it soon became apparent that I was going to need to break out the disc grinder with a wire wheel in it. This did a better job and sped things up considerably. In a best case scenario, the rust kill solution would only be applied where there is corrosion for it to interact with, because that's how it works. In this instance, while there are parts of each sheet that were not corroded, I decided that having this product over the whole sheet would give it some protection until it is painted, and would also give the latter paint a uniform surface to adhere to. Once the rust kill treatment had dried, I needed to go through and fill the holes in the iron with silicone. Some of the sheets required a bit more panel beating, particularly where the nails had pierced the iron, which had left the iron protruding from the surface. I had to convert at least one sheet from an oversheet to an undersheet, so it was particularly important to seal the holes well, as they would be in the valley of the corrugation rather than at the top. You can see from the upper sections that I have already done, I decided that it would be best if I put in 3 pieces of timber between the cross members to support the plywood. This was in part because I decided to use short pieces of plywood that were almost exactly the size I needed, but they were of an inferior quality to what I had originally planned to use, but also because the plywood simply does not have enough strength to span the 1.2 between the rails and support the weight that's going to be put on it. The pieces of timber were whatever I had lying around, and so whilst the size was consistent within each section, they varied considerably across the sections. That was of no consequence for what they needed to do. Good morning, here we are, another day on the timber rack. So put in a fairly long day yesterday. I was a bit shattered by the time I got to the end of it. And so yesterday, I think it's probably obvious from the video, but in case not, I put in all the framework on these 2 shelves for the plywood to go onto. And so this morning's job is to cut the plywood as I need to. That plywood is just some rubbish stuff. It was actually packing crates, and so you know it'll do the job. It was free, that's good. So I need to crack on and get this done, and I also want to fix the building paper on the top, so I'll need to put the ribbons through before I do that, and I will also need to put a board across the end of the purlins here, and so that's sitting there to be done. So, and then once I've done that, then I can put the ribbon across the top and then the building paper on. Hopefully I will get at least that much done before the showers arrive later in the day. I'm really hoping to get the iron on as well, even if it's only got a couple of screws in each sheet. We'll see how we go. Okay, I'll crack on with it. The further this part of the job progressed, the more it became a bit of a mad scramble, as the weather deteriorated about 7 hours sooner than I was expecting from the forecast. No sooner did I have all the plywood nailed down than it started to spit. I quickly put the old sheets of flat iron that I have on the top shelf to protect the plywood. I could then stand on this while I fixed the ribbon to support the paper and then the paper. You will see that by the time I had the paper stapled on, the rain was quite consistent, and it was clear that it was not going to ease off for a while. In the next video, I will complete the fixing of the roof, including the fact that due to design changes, i.e. I extended the roof further north to shade the timber and also put a bit of an overhang on the south end, I needed to find an additional sheet of iron, which I did. The rain was forecast to start about 8 PM this evening. It started to spit lightly at about 1 PM, which wasn't what I had in the plan, but that's okay. I do have the building paper on there now, so hopefully the water won't get through. It shouldn't do because there's a huge overlap between the sheets. And then maybe tomorrow, maybe not till next week, I can come back and put the iron on. I think though, in the interim, I'm going to put some timber above the purlins on top of the building paper, just in case we get some wind, because I don't want it to rip it off. But anyway, so it was a bit of a scamper in the end to, let's get under here, see if we can see this. You can see I've put the ribbon under there, and I ran them this way as well as this way, just to make sure that paper does not sag. And yeah, so that's done, and I just need to put something on top there just to make sure that the wind doesn't do anything nasty to it. I may even put 3 sheets of iron up on there and then put the timber on top of that, might be safer. Okie dokie, that's it for today basically. Bye. And there we go. That will suffice for all but a hurricane really. They're not screwed down or anything, they're just sitting there, but it's a fairly sheltered spot, apart from obviously the wind does roar up the driveway sometimes, but other than that I think it should be absolutely fine until the rain goes away next week and I can come back and finish it. But it does mean that if I do get some dry spells that in between, that I can actually start putting stuff into the rack, which will be a bonus in itself. Okie dokie, bye.